Hey, welcome to Better by Friday. My name is Joe Willis, and I want to talk about controlling the controllables. And to do that, we're going to use Stephen Covey's circle of influence versus circle of concern. Let's identify what those two circles are real quick. So, around the outer edge, we have what we're going to refer to as the circle of concern. And this circle of concern is all of the things going on in our world that we are, for one reason or another, concerned about. And that could be the weather, that could be politics, that could be our house, our health, our job. Doesn't matter. They are things that concern us. And I'd like to ask you, just pause momentarily and think about what are all of those things that concern you? Now the question becomes, what do you do about it? And that's where Covey tells us we have the circle of influence. The circle of influence is where we are proactive. That is where we can begin to control the controllables. Know what we can control and control the controllables. Viktor Frankl. So, of all of these concerns we have, perhaps the weather is one of them. Let's say that's the case because we know that there has been a tremendous amount of tornadoes all across the country. And maybe this is one of those things that's concerning you or your family. And if that's the case, what do you do about it? Because you certainly can't control whether or not a tornado hits your town. But what can you do? And this is where we take a proactive stance at the edge of our circle of influence. And that circle of influence is where we choose to use words like I choose, I can, instead of words like I can't, if only I had, these things are happening to me. The edge of that circle of influence, what's the first step I could take regarding this weather situation? Because I can't control whether or not the weather happens. And so as I start to think about how this is influencing me, what's the first step I can take? Well, maybe it's preparing my shelter in place kit. Maybe it is informing my family of the plans in our home when these things happen. Regardless of what it is, it's taking that proactive step of this is what I can choose to do here and now in the moment to prepare myself for that. The same is true about any of these other concerns we have. Perhaps it's a relationship that's damaged or broken and meaningful to us that we want to do something about. It concerns us. Maybe it keeps us up at night. What's the first reasonable step I can take to be proactive and make progress towards mending that relationship? Maybe it's taking some self-reflection time and being vulnerable enough to say this is where I made my mistakes, or it's calling somebody out and holding them accountable for their mistakes or their role in damaging the relationship. Doesn't matter what it is. If we allow this to consume us without doing something proactive, it's just going to deteriorate over time and get worse. But if instead I choose to be proactive, I choose to use my influence, it's an incredibly empowering experience. I've also talked largely about this circle being things that I can actually control, that are within my reach, a decision I can make, an action I can take. I want to remind us that inside of this circle of influence, we have control over ourselves. And this is where it becomes incredibly important to be mindful, to spend some time thinking about our thinking. Because ultimately, every moment is an opportunity to make a decision. But the time we spend making that decision should begin with us. And like I said in another video, the Viktor Frankl quote, in between stimulus and response is time. And in that time, we have the opportunity to choose our response. That's an incredibly powerful place to be. So, I want to end with a Theodore Roosevelt quote: do what you can with what you have where you are. And it begins by identifying where you're at. but it ends with doing what you can. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Remember, ultimately the goal is to be better by Friday.